Growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions, like how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then, drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony, air quotes nippy, Ames.
And this is A Little Bit Culty, a podcast about what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real cult stories told directly by the people who lived through them.
Because we want you to learn a few things we've had to learn the hard way.
Like, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you're already prime recruitment material.
You might even already be in a cult.
Oops. You better keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Season 6 of A Little Bit Culty. Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of our chat with the wise and wonderful Jaime Mahler. She's a licensed mental health counselor and author, and the kind of influencer the world could use more of. You can find her on social media dispensing brilliant nuggets on trauma and toxic relationships at Recollected Self, and you'll find more info on her in our show notes. Before you keep listening, make sure you back up and listen to part 1 of the conversation if you haven't already. Happy listening to you, and here's Jaime Mahler. Thanks again for listening to A Little Bit Culty. Thank you so much for coming back to tell us about the book. In the last week's episode, we heard your story and your journey in and out of the culty aspects of Catholicism, and then you took space to figure out what happened to you. And I'm sure a lot of other things happened along the way, but eventually you decided to write this book, Toxic Relationship Recovery, which we loved, and I feel like we're going to be recommending it to a lot of people. Similarly to Take Back Your Life by Janja Lalich, it's not cults, abusive relationships go hand in hand. It's the same dynamics, just a small cult of one or a big cult of many people, thousands, millions, the dynamics are the same. So first of all, why did you decide to write the book? And also why focus just on abusive relationships and not mention cults? Was there a decision?
Yeah, so it's funny. I don't use the word, I'm trying to think if I use the word narcissism at all in the book. I might use it once. I purposefully didn't use certain terms. Cults wasn't really coming across my radar because I know that actually is a great expansion for the demographic of people that it would relate to. But I know that narcissism is this trendy word and people like to use it in different ways. The reason I actually didn't use this word, even the word cult, I understand that. Not that I try to not say that word, but it's like people love to immediately categorize those thoughts. Like they go, narcissism, categorize, cult, categorize, right? And so it's hard for people to create the nuance or the gray area of some of these terminologies. And so not that we have to not add that language for when it's supposed to be there, right? Call a cult, call a narcissist or narcissistic tendencies, what they are. Yet, what I've noticed in the collective culture is that people will hear one word and they'll immediately go, I'm not part of that.
Right.
I'm not part of that system. I couldn't be exposed. My partner's not in that category.
Right.
Or I'm not part of a cult or like similar that parallel, right? But when you explain it without using those definitive categories, people can arrive to those conclusions themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So for anyone who's questioning whether or not they're a part of, a narcissistic system or a cult system, if we use that terminology, because, someone, if you listen to my story, I know that I was trained to immediately say, that's not part of my story. Right. So I would immediately bypass a book that had those terminologies. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Except if I was like, I don't know, this behavior doesn't seem right. And I started reading about those behaviors, there is a higher likelihood that I'd be able to draw a conclusion that I am a part of a system that has these attributes, then it's almost like I don't want people to bypass the opportunity to learn, if that makes sense. So when you asked about like, why did I create the structure and like, why did I, what motivated me? I realized that we collectively live in a lot of toxic systems. We have a lot of toxic relationships, a lot of toxic family systems. And I really was trying to shoot the moon, and I wanted each chapter to be hitting each category. I wanted a toxic religion. I wanted a toxic family chapter. I wanted a toxic partner chapter. And I'll never forget, my publisher was like, LOL, like almost either that book is not going to be able to come to fruition or it's going to take you forever to write. And also, to be fair, if I was going to do a book like that, it would be triple the length and I would have took 2 years to write it, right? So they looked at me and they go, listen, we love this idea. Can we just categorize it deeper to something that's more, of a niche topic, which is partnerships?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, for the listeners that are like, I don't have a toxic partner, right? I'm going to speak directly to you guys right now. Most of us that don't have a partner that is like, you're like, oh, this feels healthy. And I know that I'm not being coerced, right? I invite you to still consider the book, because the ideas that are in this book are written in a way that you can generalize them to, let's say, a cult experience, an MLM experience, a experience with a friendship, an experience with a family, right? So when you hear the terminologies that I use, you don't have to keep it in the partnership, because it really does expand to any system
Absolutely.
That's based on power and control.
Absolutely. I would go a step further. Sarah, am I a toxic partner?
No.
Do I have toxic behaviors?
Yes.
And some of those toxic behaviors described in the book?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And vice versa.
So I'll just say that. If you just want language to quantify some of the times when you're not optimal, right? It doesn't mean you're a toxic person, but we all have programming from our parents that's not optimal. My parents aren't perfect, right? And there's some toxic, I grew up with 4 boys in the South where our emotions weren't nurtured and we were told to go handle our own shit on our own. That's toxic. I mean, for me, because I had to grow up in adulthood and learn how to do that on my own. I still have a tendency to do those things on my own. So there's some great excerpts from your book that I just go, oh my God, that's amazing. And in my first relationship, when I was like 18, 19 years old, I could even go and say I was a toxic partner because I just didn't know how to handle it. And anytime someone tried to approach me, I was like, I'm strong enough to handle it on my own. And it took me about 2-3 years to reflect on that first relationship and go, yeah, I was a dick. And so, but I think the reason I was able to reflect on it is because I generally have a disposition where I want to be better. And I knew it was kind of a me problem. Right. So yeah. I think that's my saving grace in terms of Sarah going, no, you're a totally toxic partner. So I was just deflecting and I was immature emotionally, but I was immature emotionally because I had some toxic upbringing in an atmosphere. So don't go into it thinking, oh my God, I'm going to find out I'm toxic. For me, it was like, it put great language to just strategies that we all have in some shape or form.
That's awesome.
If you want that wisdom, this book has it. Yeah.
I mean, it is scary for people to think about this for a second, right? I've talked about this in the past. Many people don't know my story. I was one of those people that turned into a toxic partner. I definitely did. I'm being serious. I really did. I had a lot of the tendencies I write in the book. I still to this day have to catch when I go into a tendency of one of the things in my book. And this is why I'm a big believer in language. If we think about the word toxic, if we even talk about the title, people are like, ooh, toxic. Do we really want to do that? You're kind of inherently injecting blame, shame, judgment, guilt. And I go, listen, I'm a believer in calling something for what it actually is, because by doing that, we can actually hold either the system or ourselves in the fullness of ownership of that behavior. I am not saying I'm inherently bad. That's not what I'm saying. I've done very bad behaviors in the past, and I try to keep myself in check. Yet, I know that I have inherent dignity and worth and value, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I try to explain to people is I go, listen, we are a very complex, nuanced system here, right? We are experiencing a million different shades of nuance and gray and all these different things. And what happens in that is that we have things coexisting inside of us. Mm. We know that we have inherent dignity and worth, yet we just said something really passive aggressive or blame shifting to our partner. What are we going to do with that information? We can either say, I'm all good or I'm all bad, or, and this is the healing part of it, you can ask yourself, how do I experience those things coexisting and what do I want to do about it, right? Do I want to say, well, I can't be an angel. What do you want from me, Sarah? I can't be perfect. I'm not a perfect partner. If you want a perfect partner, go marry the Saint Pope person over there, right? Like, and you're like, okay, hold on, right? And I actually talk about this in the book. I go, be very careful when your partner is projecting an all or nothing narrative, because they are immediately trying to frame themselves as they're completely helpless in their own advocacy, right? They're saying, well, I can't be perfect, so what do you want from me? And when you have a trained, emotionally skilled person on the other side of that conversation, they can say, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to hold the implication of your behavior for a moment so you can understand it's impacting our relationship. That's what I'm asking of you. I do still love you. I do still care about you. I know that you are a good person in the heart of your hearts. And what just happened in that dialogue, we need to untangle. We need to untangle that, because clearly that is an example of how we can start on a cycle of being very, very harmful to each other. And if we don't check that behavior, we're going to normalize that behavior. And I'm not willing to normalize that behavior. I'm not going to normalize passive aggressive behaviors between the two of us. I'm not going to normalize blame shifting or deflection. So if I see any of that, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to invite you, really. I'm going to invite you to have those things coexist and hold space for what that means. And why this is so complex, Sarah's asking about the healing process. The reason why this gets so complex is because many people are trying to do this work where they're just getting to the point of emotional skill development.
Yes.
And then they see the opportunity for growth and they're realizing they're slowly growing and their partner, they're like, catch up with me. Come on. Come on, you can do this, right? Like, you got to learn this stuff too. And in the book, I call it emotional piggybacking. I go, just because you go to therapy does not mean that your partner de facto is healing. That's not happening, right? It's not happening. Just because you've learned emotional skills does not mean that when you go back into that household, they're going to understand how to dialogue about difficulties, right? And like Nippy, yours is a great example. You were talking about like how emotional, like stuntedness or neglect or whatever. It's like, okay, well, right. You talk about what happens when someone never got taught the skills to dialogue about their emotional experience. Of course, you're 18 years old and you're showing up with behaviors that you're not happy about when, in your middle life. Like, you're sitting there like, what? Why did I do that? Right? But it's because if you sit there, you look at a child and you go, why are they so unskilled? Why can't they ride the bike? I can ride the bike with my eyes closed. What are you talking about? And I go, this person never got taught any of these skills. So clearly it does you zero justice to shame that child for not having a skill. It doesn't excuse, going back to the other parallel, it doesn't excuse someone being destructive and violent or emotionally neglectful or abusive, right? It doesn't excuse that. You're allowed to call that into the consciousness and be like, hey, you're hurting me, right? You're allowed to say that, but you expecting that they're going to have the right strategy on the other side of that, you have to do an inventory. Ask yourself, is this person showing the emotional skills that if I say something and I bring it into the consciousness of this, of our relationship, if I bring it up, is this person showing skills around emotional navigation?
Right.
Have you ever seen them emotionally navigate through a very difficult situation? And some people will be like, no, I have seen it. So I'm going to try to, reiterate that, I know you're capable. Let's practice this. Right. But then what happens with people who are in partnerships with this, they like learn these skills, they read the book. Right. And then their brain goes, okay, well, I know it. So clearly they're going to need to respond to me in a better way. And I go, you're doing like almost like the horse before the cart or whatever, like that analogy, whatever that is. Yep. But it's like, they don't even have the language to describe what's going on. So all they have is everything in the first part of the book, which is, you're threatening me. I got to deflect. I got to blame shift. I got to do this.
Here's my caveat or question to that. Number one, can I request that there's a 30-minute lag period before the feedback and the request of listening to let tempers flare down to our audience? This is directed at no one in particular. And secondly, what I hear and what I kind of have experienced in all these things, just with like Sarah and I have many friends who have relationships, consistently what I hear is someone does a step in that direction and they try to introduce it to their spouse, and their spouse just doesn't want to hear it. They don't want to hear they have these flaws. And then I think ultimately, in some cases, there's expectations being thrust on this person and they're not ready to hear it. How do you suggest someone navigates that, particularly when the nature of the relationship was set up on them not being that person?
Right. Because if the nature of the relationship was unconscious, like you guys just happen to start dating, or you guys just happen to end up together, or you happen to have a kid together, right? I go, that's a lot of unintentional binding together, right? You're realizing that you're getting deeper and deeper into this relationship to each other, but it's not conscious decision making about that. So if you get to the second half of the book, I do it, I don't know, it's probably like half the chapter. I talk about the standard survey, which is I basically outline all the different facets of your life. And I go, start developing how you want to communicate as a couple, right? So how do you want to add joy or playfulness to your life? How do you want to dialogue about emotions? How do I, like what you just did, Nippy, was a great example. You said, I would prefer, that's a standard. You're like, I would prefer a space for processing. So if something happened, I am coming to my partner and I'm saying, I know that I will be able to process something better if there's slightly a gap or even a little bit of time, which is usually an indicator. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and on my little armchair, but usually you see.
You can. Well, this is therapy for us. Go for it.
This podcast wouldn't happen without our amazing, supportive, generous patrons. Are you with us? Come find us over on Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty for bonus episodes, exclusive content, and the occasional Zoom with our fan favorites from our past episodes. It's a lot of fun over there, people.
The Frankies were a picture-perfect influencer family, but everything wasn't as it seemed.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here asking for help. He's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. Ruby Frankie is his mom's name.
Infamous is covering Ruby Frankie, the world of Mormonism, and a secret therapy group that ruined lives. Listen to Infamous wherever you get your podcasts.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to A Little Bit Culty, shall we?
One of the reasons why I think we've endured, and even before this podcast just now, is like, it's a fucking miracle we're still together, given what we went through in the cult, but also like Nippy's background and my background are so different. Like him, family of 5 boys, can't express feelings, getting hit. And then me having like these 2 therapists being like, tell me how you feel and what would you do different next time? And like such different ways of processing emotions that we came together and we can even get through shit at all honestly, it's a miracle. Right?
Well, this is a good example. I'll talk about like a personal anecdote. My partner is very similar to, it sounds like, I can't say definitively, but like Nippy's processing. Like I know for a fact that he does better with space with the dialogue. So he'll be like, we're having a disagreement on something. And, he's like, I don't have this figured out yet. And I'm going to need a little bit more time. I'm the exact opposite. My brain is already on fire and it already has all of these ideas, which by the way, I actually tell people, if we're talking about external versus internal processing or verbal versus retrospective or reflective processing, if you think about like those two things. What's interesting is I've even made the case that I could have a rationale during an argument or a conflict or a dialogue, and that isn't always my real truth. So if you give me a day, sometimes I'm realizing whatever I immediately had in that conversation wasn't actually truly reflective of what my real thoughts were on the matter, right? So if I'm like, no, you're just doing this because you know, like, I don't know, like say like a misogyny wound. I'm like, you're just doing this because, you know, it's easier for men to do this. And that's why you want to do this. And he's like, that's not fair. Why are you saying that? And I'm like, you know what? That's just my opinion, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, you know what? Let's take a day, like give us some space, blah, blah, blah. Right. So if he takes that day, he'll be like, I can see why you came to that conclusion. It did look a lot like I was pulling like a misogyny card or whatever. And this is what you need to understand. So he'll be able to come to a conclusion of like what his almost objective was when he was describing the thing we were conflicting about, right? But then my brain typically goes, and this is what I talk about with self-ownership in the book. I talk about a lot about self-ownership. Self-ownership is I took time. I came back to that dialogue and I go, I have a misogyny wound. If I get really angry, I will link it to like a patriarchy or misogyny wound, and then I'll project it. And so if you give me one day, I usually can come back to my partner and go, that was a wound and I was projecting it on you. And it wasn't reality. It felt like reality when I was in the argument. It wasn't reality. I know that you're not misogynistic and I know that you are not advocating for the patriarchy. It was my wound speaking. And in that moment, I was verbally processing with you, but it was definitely a wound that was coming up and I was pushing it right back onto you, right? And so this is one of those strategies. What we just described, think about how much skill it took. It took the one person, the one party to know that they are maybe more of an internal processor and then advocate for that.
And I'm the external processor. I'm the external processor saying, no, we need to process it right now. Right now. To which Nippy's like feeling cornered. And I'm like,
yes,
getting him tighter and tighter into the corner. And then he leaves to go process and my fear of abandonment's triggered. And then I'm already packing. I'm packing because all or nothing. We can't clearly navigate this. So we might as well break up. This has been a pattern. And if this is too personal, we could cut it out.
All I'm doing is just reconciling my pride at that point. Right. I just go like, I'm just letting my pride calm down so I can come back and have a civil discourse.
No, and then he comes back. And I will say Nippy's really good at making things light, but also using laughter or using humor as a buffer. And this is like a good thing and a bad thing.
Humor is the Vaseline for social intercourse, Sarah.
Vaseline? Oh
so
my God.
Nippy comes back just before he self-cleans and like says what he's recognized. This is his apology. Nippy, go say it.
Have you thought about your behavior?
So I know. Okay.
I say it like that. I'm like, have you thought about your behavior?
And then we laugh.
I hug her when I do it.
But I think what's great about it is it diffuses the situation. What's not great about it is that we don't always get to the root of what happened. We kind of like brush it under the rug and move on because we have kids and blah, blah. Life happens.
Yeah, I mean, life happens. Well, this is what I would point out. I like that you guys are using like this real life example. I would point this out. It takes two people to own how they're processing. Notice this. Okay. So if I can own, I know that in the moment I process in vivo. I practice in the lived reality of the moment of the occurrence, right? What ends up happening is, like I said, sometimes I have clarity. Sometimes I don't have clarity. So I'll just say wounded things. And my partner's like, do you really believe that? You really believe that I'm misogynistic? And I'm like, I don't know what to think. This is all like, this is what it feels like sometimes, right? And he walks away really hurt because he's like, I know in the heart of my heart, that's not who I am. And you're like aiming me to be this like villain. And I go, right. And that's why it takes two parties to own what's happening. He's realizing clearly Jamie's in this external processing moment and I can't do this in this moment. I don't even have the tools right now. I need a moment to think. So he might be like, I need to take back, not because I'm trying to abandon you. And we've actually used that word before. He'll be like, I'm not leaving this conversation. I'm needing time for this conversation. Yeah. That's it. I'm not leaving it. I'm not abandoning it. we will be able to readdress this.
I need to calm down and then figure out what I did.
Exactly. Exactly. And then on the counterpoint, this is what I would say on the counterpoint. So if we're talking about the trauma recovery model in the book, one of the key components is self-ownership. What I'm talking about with self-ownership in this example that we just talked about with you two, if you can own the fact that both of you have unique perspectives going on during that conflict, what starts happening is you don't have to compete against each other. You don't have to make Nippy into an external processor, and Nippy, you don't have to make her into an internal processor, right? All you're doing is actually looking at each other and saying, both of our processing styles are valid, and we have a responsibility to try to figure out how to navigate between the two of those. And when you have two partners that are willing to do that, serious magic can happen, because now you look at each other with respect, that you are a unique individual that has a unique processing power, and that both parties are being responsible for how those two different things can cause harm or cause healing.
For more background on what brought us here, check out my page-turning memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. And if you want to see that story in streaming form, you can watch both seasons of The Vow on HBO.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one. I actually saw one of your Instagram little videos, which I thought was great, is that a healthy relationship, you is something like you enjoy each other. In a toxic relationship, you endure each other. And I thought that was really brilliant. And I mean, there's probably moments of both, but like, truthfully, I think with us, and maybe sidebar, we can hire you to clean up some stuff. Because I think that like what's left over, and we've talked about this in couples counseling, but I don't think I really saw it as clearly as we did here in relation to the cult conversation, is that we're fucked from the beginning. Because day one of the 5-day with NXIVM is, let's look at needs, desires, preferences. And they break it down. If you buy into the model, needs are survival, food, shelter, water. Anything else is a non-integrated fixation, right? It's a desire. I think I need a career. I think I need this. I think I need that. Some of that's true from a Buddhist point of view. Nothing from the outside world causes happiness. But like connection, respect, love, need. If I believe I don't have any needs and I'm in a relationship where like, hey, I'm feeling like disrespected or I'm feeling whatever. And the answer is, well, that's just your deficiency. And talk about, this is one of the main nuggets I got from your book, the internal dialogue of what we did for ourselves to shut that thinking down, stop thought terminating cliche, or just thought stopping. That's just me being needy. That's just me being needy. Fuck that noise, right? Like this was the basis of, I think, a lot of our dynamics.
Let me point out, from the podcast's sake, how vulnerable does that make you? Because if you're not sovereign over your own needs and desires, then who could be? But when we look at every detail, it's like, this is why I'm so passionate about self-sovereignty. I'm not trying to make people mini gods. What I'm trying to help people understand is self-sovereignty is that I must embrace that I am a unique person with unique wants, unique needs, and unique aspirations or perspectives. And so when I can create a standard, like you just said, hey, Nippy, or you said, Sarah, I would like you to give me a little more space. That's not you being needy. That's you being self-sovereign. You're actually owning the experience inside of you.
Making what you feel need bad is making you somewhat into a robot, and then a non-integrated fixation based on what standard? What are you not integrated with? What is the actual thing that we're supposed to be integrated with?
Jamie, I think we should do an Instagram live where we like one by one go through some of the nuggets in your book and talk about how it, like give real life examples about how the dynamic happens in a cult and how it happens in a relationship. And just so, because what I loved about your book, and I think it is brilliant that you didn't use those buzzwords because you just gave examples, really specific real life examples of what codependence is, what enmeshment is, these terms that I think many of us know but don't really know. And then how to use, what I also loved is how to use radical self-honesty to reflect and see where you did it, and then also tools to not do it anymore. And that's what I really, really liked about your book. But specifically for this audience, like, what are the correlations? And I think a lot of the things stem down to what I just said, which is that there's a belief that you don't really have needs. And that's so toxic that the person, in this case, like with NXIVM, the cult can always say anything that I'm experiencing, like I'm not feeling safe right now, or I'm not feeling connected, or I feel loved or whatever. That's just something I need to work on. I need to go get an EM. Like that's a me problem. And the fact of the matter is, it's not black or white, like you say in your book. It's not one thing or the other. It's possible that my needs aren't being met and I am needy because I'm used to codependency. It could be both, right?
Right. But also it starts with self-compassion. Like if you're told that you don't have needs, like the parallel between my story, if you go to part 1 of the podcast, episode, if you think about what we were told I was told my needs were demonic. You were told your needs don't exist, right? And in a toxic relationship, most people are either told, they're whether or not it's the religion angle, most people are told your needs are either inconvenient or they don't fit the model of this relationship, right? So if you're like, oh, well, I would like to, not swear at each other. I use this example a lot. I would like us to not swear at each other when we're having a conflict. Well, that doesn't fit my perspective of how I want to dialogue with you. So your needs are getting bypassed for my perception of how I want to treat you, right? So if you think about that, what's happening in a toxic relationship or a microscopic way is that I'm basically, with each conversation, asking you to bypass your inherent wisdom about what you need or who you are or how you self-express. And I'm saying that doesn't fit my narrative of who I want you to be. And this is why when you untangle from a toxic relationship, most people are going, I don't know who the hell I am. I genuinely don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I don't like. I don't know what I want out of a partner. And I go, that is such a sign, such a deep-rooted sign that someone spoke over your sovereignty, possibly for years.
Right. And that's 100% what happened with us in NXIVM. We were spoken over. We weren't allowed to express. And the other thing I think really was a correlation was the concept of charade. Just like somebody in a relationship being like, oh, like the shiny, happy people, or like in a relationship, yeah, everything's fine, we're fine. It was the toxic positivity of being we were in a success program that taught the science of joy. If you weren't joyful, the tools weren't working. I mean, there were times when I did feel true joy, but for the most part, I was embodying the mission, right? And this is the same thing as what T. Lovings wrote in her book, which hasn't come out yet, about like she was more dedicated to the image, the PR campaign of the relationship than the truth of the relationship.
Because if I actually untangle, this is a great parallel. If I untangle what I went through, people are like, well, did you experience joy and connection and community when you were deep into your, cult-like experience? And I go, yes. And if I could speak to what it felt like in a general sense, it felt like I was suffocating. It felt like every time I tried to express my humanity and tell people what it really felt like to endure these things, people were like, that doesn't fit. You aren't fitting in here if you talk about that. That's a problem, right? And I go, if someone's training you to basically rid yourself of your inherent wisdom, throw up not a yellow flag, throw up a full-on red flag, because that is a very problematic behavior. I'm basically trying to indoctrinate you out of your own existence. That's incredibly harmful. And when it happens in a system like you experienced, Sarah and Nippy, its exponential impact is just, it's pure. If someone asks me what pure evil is, I say that. I literally go, when you reach the masses with something that inherently disrupted to the psyche, I would never call wearing a spaghetti strap evil, but I call that evil.
I'm with you on that. Now, I'm aware that I still had lots more to talk to you about. So why don't we we'll do a Patreon episode with maybe audience questions, and we'll do a live Instagram or whatever you have capacity for, because I know your book just came out. We'll have already introduced you in the introduction to the episodes of why the book's so great and how it's helpful to us. Any last words of wisdom for survivors? And again, lots of our audience are survivors and lots of our audience are just people who are interested in cults, but everyone has a relationship in their life, whether it's like a partner or something more serious, with somebody who's toxic in some way. What's your advice to those people?
I think what I would leave everyone with is that when you start taking the relationship you have with yourself seriously, that you can actually take yourself seriously, your wants, your needs, your desires. You can look at them with curiosity instead of criticism, instead of cruelty, and in my case, instead of, demonic possession, right? If you can look at yourself and say, I'm not the enemy. I'm not the enemy. I have wisdom inside of me that is meant to guide me. And my role is to develop discernment and moderation and anchor it into collective humanity so I can make sure I'm respecting other people, but also that I'm respecting myself, right? This is the biggest thing is we get lost and people go to the collective, go to the collective, go to the collective, think of everybody else. And I go, if you lose yourself when you're engaging in that, this is how we don't recognize ourselves eventually. We don't know who we are. So start investing in the relationship you have with yourself. Start thinking about how you're engaging with yourself. How are you taking care of your psyche and your body and your experience, right? Once you can ask yourself that with curiosity, not deprecation, there is a lot of freedom on the other side of that.
I love that. And I apologize for not asking you this first off. How does that compare with your definition of a toxic relationship?
I mean, the freedom you feel when you're on the other side of recovery, I look at it as an imprisonment versus true freedom. And what does that mean? People are like, what does true freedom mean? And I go, when you're locked in by other people's perceptions of you and by other people's narratives for you or other people's directives for you, you're never going to be able to get to know yourself. You're just falling in line. You're just asking, who am I? Someone tell me who I can be. And I go, that's going to start feeling like a prison because eventually there's going to be a breadcrumb moment. There's going to be a moment of reckoning and your body's going to say, hey, what they just said, what that person just said, what came out of their mouth, that doesn't align with you. That doesn't align with who you are. And you can either fall in line or you can listen to your inherent wisdom. And with, like I just said, this is the key points here. You have to discern. You have to anchor yourself in the collective humanity. So in order to make sure you're not becoming another cult leader, you have to also understand that you have to respect other people's humanity and their sovereignty. I like to say in the book, I'm not teaching you to have power over people. I'm teaching you how to have power over yourself and actually harness your inherent power in the wisdom that's found within you, right? My goal is to not have anyone experience a recreation or a cycling of this experience. And so when you become sovereign and your goal is to never speak over anyone else's sovereignty, that allows the collective to be free, but also be in community with each other. Think about that. I want everyone to be in community. People are like, oh my God, you're acting like it. Should I not have a partner? Should I not have friends? And I go, that's not what we're saying. We're not saying that at all. We're saying in order for there to be a healthy community, everyone needs to look at each other as though they are their own wisdom. And when we look at each other in community, we can go, I want you to be as free as me. So I don't want my power to coerce you, right? And that's how we untangle these things. We have to understand that it's people's attempt to have control over us that is leading to this like cyclical experience, right? But when we can stand in our own power and we can go, all right, it looks like you disagree with me wearing spaghetti straps. I'm realizing that the spaghetti straps that I'm wearing are an expression of my style. They're an expression of who I am. which means that person that has a problem is probably not matching in your community. Does that make sense? Like they shouldn't be in the circle if they look at that as a thwarting of their own autonomy. So you have to kind of like, this is getting pretty complex and we'll definitely go into the live on this. But when you get really deep into this, it's really about anchoring inside of yourself. Because once you're anchoring inside of yourself, you can speak with more authority and you can operate with more autonomy.
Which I think is so beautiful. And to wrap up, I think what a lot of the new age groups do these days is they're promising that. They're promising its sovereignty and they're promising empowerment and all these beautiful things, but there's still a codependency on the group to provide those things.
Sarah, this is one of the things I want to add because I have this, I'm not joking you, this is the book, this is the page I have opened. I talk about there is a huge difference between someone facilitating healing and someone being the one and only source of that healing. By bypassing personal ownership over recovery, the codependency wound is not healed. It's merely transferred to another source.
Yep. It's why people cult hop. And we're going to do a chapter of this in our new book, and we're going to quote our guests to reinforce the concept. So we'll be sure to quote you for our chapter on codependency and cult hopping in our future book coming soon.
I love that.
And where can people find you? Where do people find you, Jaime?
Okay, well, if anyone wants to find me, you can go to my website, recollectedself.com. It's also on all social medias at Recollected Self. And then you can find the book pretty much anywhere books are sold. Typically Amazon, Barnes & Noble are the best bet.
And Audible, Jaime narrated herself, and it's really, really good.
Yes, I love audio books. So yes, that's kind of my tried and true. So go check that out.
And your podcast called?
My podcast is Unlearned. If you are looking for an option on trauma recovery strategies, kind of like what I've been talking about, the strategies we go over typically every single episode. So yeah, that's a free option if you want to check out my podcast, Unlearned.
So many good resources. We'll put it all in our show notes, and we'll be posting soon when the lives and the Patreons and all the things will be happening. Thank you so much, Jaime. You're awesome.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Like what you hear, do you? Give us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes. Every little bit helps us get this cult awareness content out there. Smash that subscribe button. You know you want to.
I'm trying to record this outro, and Nippy's sick in bed, and it's Thanksgiving week, so I'm here by myself with Ace. Ace, what are you doing today? Are you building Lego? What do you think about toxic relationships? Who's your best friend? Nobody? What about Elmo? Sade? Anything you want to say to the A Little Bit Culty audience? Okay, here's a question. Do you like podcasts? Do you like Lego? Do you like Spider-Man? Do you like sitting with Mommy in her office while she does her podcast? Yeah. Do you like Julie's chocolates? What do you like about them?
The taste.
The taste? Do they feel good in your belly?
Because I like chocolate.
I like chocolate too.
I like Kit Kats.
You like Kit Kats?
Do you?
No, I like Julie's chocolate better. I like Julie's chocolate, glow chocolate.
Kit Kats is yummy.
So that's my summary. In all seriousness, I've really enjoyed reading this book, analyzing all my relationships, not just the obvious ones, and looking for some of these patterns and how I can evolve them. I hope you do too. Please comment on our Instagram and Patreon if you're there, and hopefully we'll have Jaime back to discuss further on one of our live Zoom Q&A power hours over on the Patreon. Bye, everybody. Thanks for supporting A Little Bit Culty. See you next time.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We're heading over to patreon.com/alittlebitculty now to discuss this episode. In the meantime, dear listener, please remember, this podcast is solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. It's not intended as a substitute for real medical, legal, or therapeutic advice. For cult recovery resources and to learn more about seeking safely in this culty world, check out alittlebitculty.com/culty resources, and don't miss Sarah's TED Talk called How Cult Literate Are You? great stuff.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound and our co-creator and show chaplain/bodyguard, Jess Temple Tardy. Our show writer is Holly Zadra, and our theme song, Cultivated, is by John Bryant.